You're listening to the wrong podcast. Topics today include service, shame, and saucers.
Wrong! What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people? Wrong! You do have to tolerate it. It's my show.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about politics, culture, religion, sports, and anything else you're not allowed to talk about in polite company. Issue number 1! Veteran! I have this friend. He learned a very important life lesson. He passed it on to all of us who are friends with him on social media. And I think it is important for you, too, to learn this life lesson. He and his wife went out to Claim Jumper. By the way, where are the Claim Jumpers? Like, they have disappeared. If you're not from Southern California, you may not know about Claim Jumper. But let me just say something about Claim Jumper. Hey, the ones of you that are still around, what happened to the mud pie? Like, what is going on? Anyway, my friend, he went to Claim Jumper with his wife at happy hour. They were going to get cheap appetizers to eat for dinner. And they sit down, and there's an older man, and he's asking his waitress for the bill. And he says, "Do you have a veteran's discount?" And she says, "Of course, let me go get your bill." And my friend says to his wife, "Hey, he's an older man, he's a veteran. Why don't we pay for dinner for him?" And his wife goes, "Well, what about dessert?" Oh, he had just ordered dessert to go. And she goes, let's just buy his dessert. And he's like, "No, come on, let's be generous. Let's buy this veteran his dinner." And she says, "Okay, fine. Go ahead." So they wave down his waitress, say, "Hey, we will take care of his check." She brings his check to them, and she lets him know, "Your bill has been taken care of." And they look at the bill, and he has ordered the calamari for an appetizer. He's gotten the French onion soup for the soup. He's gotten a salad. And then he gets the prime rib dinner. And he gets the $4 Diet Coke. And he gets the mother load cake to go. And this bill comes out to over $150 with the veterans discount included. Thank goodness for the veterans discount there on behalf of my friend. And he is shocked at how expensive this is. He had no idea that this man had really gone all out for himself. And the man comes over. He's like, "Thank you so much for the dinner. I really appreciate it. I served at Pearl Harbor, and my wife and we had 6 kids. Thank you so much. I'm taking my cake and going home now." And the waitress comes back to my friend to say, "Can I take your order now?" And he goes, "I think we'll just be having these pretzel bites that we ordered earlier, because we had no idea that his dinner was so expensive." And the waitress says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have told you how expensive it was." And he said, No, not your fault. My fault. I should have asked." So he and his wife graciously paid for the dinner and then went home and had peanut butter jelly sandwiches or something of that sort. So, by all means, if you're going to be generous, you should be generous. Please be generous to veterans. Honor your elders. They were doing the right thing. But maybe before you do that, ask how much the bill is beforehand. Issue number 2! Ufology. That's right. I said ufology. And some of you are like, what the heck is ufology? It sounds like he's saying UFOlogy and smushing the letters together. I, in fact, am saying ufology and smushing the letters together. And for your information, it's pronounced ufology. That's right. I'm talking about UFOs today. But they are not known as UFOs anymore. They are known as UAPs. And UAP stands for Unidentified Anomalous.
Wrong!
Wrong! Anomalous. UFO.
Wrong!
Come on, you can do this, Tim. Unidentified anomalous phenomena. That made me think of the Muppets thing.
Phenomena.
Okay, the reason that they're called UAPs is I'm not sure, but unidentified that remains, and that's good because that's the key word when it comes to UAPs or UFOs. They're unidentified. We don't know what they are. They have not been identified. Doesn't mean they can't be identified. They just have not been identified. Now, it used to be flying, and then they switched it to aerial, and then they switched it from aerial to anomalous. Man, I really hope they go back to aerial because it's a mediocre font that does its job just okay. But not all of these things are actually flying. Some of them are in outer space. Some of them go into the water. And so you can't say aerial or flying anymore. And then phenomena. Excellent use of the word phenomena because we don't know that they're actually objects. They're just things that have happened. They could, like you could be looking into a lightning storm and think you see something and nothing was there. It was just the phenomena of the lightning. So it's not necessarily an object. So I was listening to this guy, and he's a UFO expert. He's a ufologist. And there are some big takeaways that I want to give you from what I heard from this man. First, he did not sound like a crazy person, and that was helpful. He's actually a working journalist. He reports on politics for some well-known publications. So he said that there are 3 basic categories of UFOs. The first is the Tic Tac. Oh, what came up, the reason this came up is several years ago, the Pentagon actually released a bunch of video of UAPs or UFOs. They're like, hey, these things are things we caught on camera and we don't know what they are. And they weirded our pilots out. We cannot identify them. Dear public, we are letting you know that these things are out there. It does not mean they are alien or from outside our solar system or off of our planet. It just means they're out there in our skies and we don't know exactly what they are. Presumably, they're man-made, but we don't know what could have made them. So the first kind of UFO is something they call a Tic Tac. And this is shaped like a Tic Tac, but it is the size of a school bus. It's that big, 50, 60 feet long and shaped like a Tic Tac. And it flies around at incredible speeds and nobody knows where the jets are or where it's getting its energy. Oh, I should back up. I said there were 3 major types of UFOs. That's not true. So let's just say that there are 500 UFO sightings in any given year. The vast, vast majority of them are just things that we didn't identify. Again, unidentified. So, but they're not weird. If we actually got close to them, we could tell that, oh, it's a weather balloon, or it's a damaged weather balloon, or it's a drone, or it's just space trash. Something normal that we would be comfortable with. But there's a number of things that they just, there's no explanation yet for them. First is the Tic Tac, that school bus thing. The second are flying saucer type things. And apparently we don't see a lot of flying saucer like things in North America, but in Brazil, they're all over the place. They don't see the other things, they just see the flying saucer type things. And they're not necessarily saucer shaped, but close enough for our purposes. And then the third are orbs. And imagine like a cube with glowing lights inside of it, and it's covered by this translucent, some sphere, something around it. And it flies around near jets, and apparently lots of people have seen something like this. So those are the three major types of UFOs. Now, this question that was posed to this gentleman was right up my alley. I love it. And the question was, how do I start a fight with UFO people? Like if I go to a UFO convention, or if I go on Twitter or some message board online about UFOs, how do I pick a fight? What are the major things that people are debating? They all agree that UFOs are real. What do they disagree about? Here's the three, just in case you're like me and you want to meddle, you want to jump on Twitter and cause a fight with people you don't know. The first is this guy named Bob Lazar. And Bob apparently claims that he used to work at Area 51. And he decided that he didn't want to work there anymore, or he got fired or whatever. And he left, and he was worried about his own safety. And so he decided to go public with everything he knows about what's happening at Area 51. And the reason he is controversial is because most people think he's a crackpot. But there's some people who are all aboard Camp Lazar. They are on his team. They think he's telling the truth, and they're like, yep, whatever he says is true. That's eyewitness testimony. The second thing that causes massive controversy is the subject of alien abductions. There are people who claim that they have been abducted by aliens over 36 times. Happens all the time. Happens all the time to them. There's some people who say that it was quite pleasurable, and other people who are saying it was awful, and, probes and things. And there's a lot of disagreement about whether or not aliens are actually abducting people. The third thing is government involvement. There are people who are just convinced that the government knows exactly what these things are. They have crashed spacecraft or whatever they are, and they're covering it all up. They don't want anybody to know. It goes as far as people saying that the Eisenhower administration actually brokered a deal with aliens to allow them to abduct up to, 10,000 people or something like that. And then to keep it all quiet as long as they only took those 10,000 people and brought them all back. Now, the thing about this guy, I was like, okay, yeah, this is all really good information. I'm with it. I really appreciate what he's saying. I understand better UFOs. Now, he claims that he personally has seen 5 UFOs in the last 2.5 years in his own backyard. And that's where I was like, oh, come on. 5 in the last 2.5 years, all of them in your own backyard? Your neighbors, your neighbors have any viewing, are they corroborating this? Collaborating? Maybe they're collaborating. I would like them to corroborate it. And UFOs weren't a thing. You should know, UFOs weren't a thing until science fiction movies started getting made in the 30s and 40s and 50s. And then when Hollywood producers used their imagination to tell us that these things were out there, people started to see them. And this guy seems to be falling right in line with that. The Pentagon comes out with this report with all of these, flying Tic Tacs and things, and then suddenly he is seeing them in his own backyard. I'm like, no, not 5. If he was seeing them just from his own backyard, all of us would be seeing them, right? So now that I've told you what to look for, please tell me if you see any UFOs in your own backyard. Hey, it's time. What are the rules?
Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
Okay, I have a very sweet, adorable 7-year-old daughter. She's the sweetest. She's so nice. You would really like her if you got to know her. She was telling me what she wants to do when she grows up. She wants to have a business where she has a claw machine. You know, those things at Chuck E. Cheese or wherever that never pick up the ball or never pick up the stuffed animal. She wants to have one of those, but she will make it easy. It will almost always get a Squishmallow for whatever child is playing the claw machine and give it to them. Almost always. And if the child is unable to get the Squishmallow, she will personally give them a fidget toy as a consolation. I was going to say constellation. I'm having so many problems today. And I'm sure none of you mind. Anyway, as a consolation for the child who does not win the claw machine, she will give them a fidget toy. And if their parents tell them, no, you can't have the fidget toy, she will secretly give it to them anyways. This is her idea for a business. This is how she is going to make money. And I've got to tell you, super adorable. Love the idea. Except it's a loser. She's going to lose everything on this. Like, she has no hope of making a living off this claw machine. And I don't know whether or not I need to be more embarrassed about her or her school for letting this kind of thinking go on. Like, I'm apoplectic about what to do about this business idea of her. Because if she moves forward with this thing, I'm going to be taking care of her for the rest of my life. This is awful. This is a very bad business plan. And I want to let her know what a bad business plan is. But my wife is like, no, Tim, you have to support her. You have to get behind whatever she has and just be encouraging. I'm like, no, this is bad. We can't do that. It's not helping her. Here's the rule. Come up with good business ideas. I probably also should come up with a rule of a better impersonation of my lovely wife. Remember, I want to know what's wrong with you.
What's wrong with you?
If you'd like to submit a question, topic, or tell me how I was wrong, you can email me at listen@thewrongpodcast.com or submit a comment at my website, thewrongpodcast.com. And help me spread the wrong message. If you like what you hear, share it with your friends. And I really mean that. Like, if you have listened, if this is like your third episode, you're in. You've listened to 3. Like, you're going to keep listening. Go tell your friends, hey, I've listened to 3 of these. I think you should listen to at least 1. If you've listened to, 6 or 7, come on. Like, same thing. Double the incentive. If you've listened to 10, please, come on. Go tell your friends. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show. I was wrong.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Listener Eric writes in and says, you totally busted me because I was running and literally started lifting my nose up as a Spotify subscriber that just downloads any music on earth and listens anywhere on earth. And then you called me out. Not sorry, Eric. Issue number 3, the shame. I want to tell you about the worst elected politician in the United States history. No, it's not Donald Trump. No, it's not Joe Biden. It's not Barack Obama. It's not George W. Bush. The very, very, very worst elected official in the history of the United States has to be Aaron Burr.
Well, if it isn't Aaron Burr.
Sir!
I didn't think that you would make it.
To be sure, I came to say congratulations. Spit a verse, Burr. I see the whole gang is here.
You are the worst, Burr.
Aaron Burr, of course, has become more famous over the last few years because of the Hamilton musical. And here is the deal about Aaron Burr. Here's what makes him the worst. He literally murdered a man while he was vice president of the United States. And then, after murdering this guy, he commits sedition against the entire country and has to leave the country. That's pretty bad. No big fan of Joe Biden or Donald Trump, but they're going to have to do some really messed up stuff to surpass Aaron Burr. A close follow-up would have to be Andrew Jackson. Terrible, terrible person. Did some terrible things as president. He actually died with a bullet inside of him from a duel that he had been in. And I'm pretty sure he killed that guy. And then he got elected president after that. What the heck? How do we have these people? Why was this normal? That people are like, yeah, of course the vice president should be murdering somebody. Well, I'm going to explain not just dueling, but the culture that could produce something like dueling and make it normal. In the history of the world, maybe not the history, in the world right now, there's two kind of predominant cultures. There's the guilt culture. And what the guilt culture teaches its people to do is if they do something wrong, they feel bad inside. They have guilt. The other kind of culture is the shame culture, or an honor shame culture. And when you do something bad, you get left out. You get excluded. Your tribe or your family, they do something to you. So the guilt culture, it's an internal guilt. The shame culture, the honor culture, it's external, what happens to you. It's shame. Both guilt and shame, by the way, gonna be bold here, they're both bad. Not cool. Don't be motivated by either one. But turns out they're both pretty good motivators for people. So the honor shame culture, it comes from times and places where people are kind of out on their own. And they don't have the protection of the police or the government. They've got a farmstead up in the Scottish Highlands or something like that. And they've got to fend for themselves. And you don't want people attacking you. You don't want people coming to your house. You don't want people, taking your stuff. And so you need to build up a reputation that you're big and bad and you're mean and you won't take any guff from anybody, that you'll defend your stuff, you'll kill people if you have to. And you need this reputation, not so that you can kill people, but so that you don't have to kill people. And you want everybody to know, stay away from them. Don't cross in, don't trespass. They will shoot you on sight. They've got the biggest, baddest dogs. They'll come after you. And if that reputation works, you never have to do anything to anybody, right? Nobody bothers you and you don't bother anybody. When people start living out this kind of culture that produces this sort of reputation, they start putting their own self-worth in what other people think of them. There's got to be some sort of talk about you, and your whole worth is based on what those people say. And one person put it this way, that people who live in an honor-shame culture, their self-worth is lived in the look of the other. How other people look at you, that is where your self-worth lies. And you've got, you want people to look up to you and to think you're great in every single kind of way. And if somebody looks at you the wrong way, well, you need to remedy that. You need to make sure that they're looking at you the right way. And if people are talking badly about you, you've got to fix that. And that's what happened with Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. They were living out this honor-shame culture, and Alexander Hamilton, do you know what he said about Aaron Burr? He said, "He's a dangerous man. I don't trust him." Now, go on Twitter today and you'll find far, far worse than that. But Alexander Hamilton said this about Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr didn't think that was right. He needed it to be corrected. He needed Alexander Hamilton to take it back. No, don't say that about me. Tell everybody that I'm a good person, that I'm a great politician. And Alexander Hamilton was like, no, what are you going to do about it? Aaron Burr said, great, I challenge you to a duel. That's the only way to resolve this. Now, what's crazy about this is that Alexander Hamilton had lost a son to a duel just 3 years earlier. And the reason his son was in a duel was because somebody said something bad about Alexander. And the son said, hey, no, you can't say that about my dad. And the guy's like, well, I challenge you to a duel. And the Hamilton son was like, great, let's do it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, number 10 paces, fire!
And Hamilton's son died. 3 years go by, and Alexander Hamilton is like, yeah, of course we're going to duel. Of course, that's the only way to resolve it. And, they had ways out of it, like, by shooting straight up in the air, not killing the other guy, hoping the other guy would do the same. Or, you could say you were wrong, but if you said you were wrong, that would hurt your own reputation in the eyes of everybody else. You had to stand up for your word, right? So, Alexander Hamilton gets murdered by Aaron Burr because he says the wrong thing about him and won't take it back. Like, in today's day and age, that's nuts. It doesn't make sense. But back then, it made perfect sense. Like, they were doing exactly what they needed to do. And this continues today in professional wrestling. Almost all of the storylines in professional wrestling, they're based on this honor-shame thing. Like, you need to respect me. No, I don't respect you. I never will. Boom. Okay, well, we need to fight. This match is going to be personal. Let me play you just an example from this year's WrestleMania. Here are some promo hits from this year's WrestleMania.
Check the receipts, check the dates. Before there was a Forbidden Door, I was the one who built it! You dismissed every accomplishment I've made. This isn't about my dad. This isn't about the dead. It's about the living. It's about my mother. It's about my sister. It's about my wife. It's about the 14 years it took me to go from undesirable to un-goddamn deniable.
I'm the head of the table. I'm the tribal chief. I am the universal champion. 5-time WrestleMania main event. I'm the one that puts the food on the table.
You can call this place whatever you like, but this is my yard. This is my island. This is my ring. This is my WWE. At WrestleMania, you acknowledge me.
I acknowledge you, damn it. You need to acknowledge me.
Did you catch that? Did you notice he said, you must acknowledge me? And the other guy goes, I do acknowledge you, but you must acknowledge me, right? Like, confess to my reputation. That's what both of them are calling for the other one to do. Very, very, honor shame, very popular in the pro wrestling circuit. Now, all of this can actually extend into fights. I was listening to a podcast called The Hidden Brain, and they were talking to a researcher about honor shame culture, and this is what he had to say.
Ryan first got interested in honor culture because of a study of homicides conducted by Richard Nisbett and his colleagues. In his book, Ryan describes what happens during argument-based homicides.
What Nisbett and his colleagues found early on was that, first of all, argument-based homicides are one of the most common forms of homicide in the U.S. So they start with what police typically refer to as a trivial altercation. You're in a bar, perhaps, you've been drinking a little bit, and you notice somebody at the table next to you who's kind of looking at you funny. And so at some point, you make eye contact, you lock eyes, and you say, are you looking at me? And maybe they respond, with some glib comment about why they'd be looking at you. You're too ugly to look at, or no, I was looking at your sister, or some comment like that. And it escalates, and now you have to respond. So it began with something that was nothing, a trivial altercation. And because in an honor culture, you can't stand somebody insulting your honor, you can't just sit there and take it, it escalates, and each party tries to one-up the other. And eventually you wind up in the parking lot and somebody's lying on the ground in a pool of blood. And it usually happens in a public setting where whatever you do or don't do will be known by the people around you. So again, your reputation is at stake. And these sorts of homicides, unlike other forms of homicide, like homicides that are committed in the midst of a robbery, for example, these argument-based homicides are much more common in honor-oriented states than in non-honor states in the U.S.
I was reading this thing by David Brooks. He's a New York Times columnist, and he was actually talking about liberal cancel culture. And he was talking about how it's all just an expression of honor shame culture. And he broke it down into three attitudes. He said the first is that members of a group lavish one another with praise so that they themselves might be accepted and praised in turn. Second, there are nonetheless enforcers within the group who build their own personal power and reputation by policing the group and condemning those who break the code. Social media can be vicious to those who don't fit in. Twitter can erupt in an instant ridicule for anyone who stumbles. And then the third feature is that people are extremely anxious that their group might be condemned or denigrated. They demand instant respect and recognition for their group. They feel some moral wrong has been perpetrated when their group has been disrespected and react with the most violent intensity to it. Somebody summed it up this way: "You have come against us. We will come against you." The group must be respected. And if it's not, well, there's hell to pay. The MAGA crowd. January 6th. The apologists for January 6th. They can't say, hey, these people did something wrong, right? Because that would be coming against the group. You can't do that. So Tucker Carlson, just recently, he's like, no, they weren't doing anything wrong. Like there might be a few people who did something wrong, but no, the vast majority of those people, they were just tourists. They really respect the Capitol. They were there respecting it. They were paying homage to their government. And why does he have to say it like this? Because he needs to show that he is part of the group. And he can't let anybody come against the group for anything that they might have done wrong. Even when it's obvious to everybody who's watching, or it should be obvious, that no, this was not a respectful gathering of people who love and honor the government. Like, that's not the purpose of what was happening on January 6th. From a personal note, I had this friend on multiple occasions. He'd be like, oh man, I just almost got in a fight. And like, I remember I was with him at an Angels game once, and he said, oh, I almost got in a fight with somebody coming out of the bathroom. We bumped into each other. And like, I was like, oh, are you okay? And he flexed at me and I flexed at him, and like, just, move on from each other or whatever. I was like, what is happening? Like, I bumped into hundreds of people and never thought I was almost in a fight. Like, can you imagine like bumping into people at Disneyland and thinking that they mean to fight you, or like just coming in and out of a bathroom at a sporting event? Like, it's almost impossible not to walk into a bathroom and not bump into somebody. And some researchers, they did some research on Southern male students. And in the South, the culture is primarily honor-shame based. And what they found was that these male students, they experienced higher levels of testosterone and cortisol when somebody bumped into them or swore at them in a hallway. So I heard this and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's my friend that thought he was always getting into fights with people at Angels games. Like, he was living out an honor shame culture. And the very, very slight imposition of somebody bumping into him was threatening his reputation. And he thought he might need to defend his own reputation in that moment. Now, there's this guy I listen to. His name's Curtis Chang. He has another podcast called the Good Faith Podcast. And he put it this way: concerning how Christianity operates with honor shame culture. And he says, so the gospel is not just we're guilty and Jesus removes our guilt, but it's also we feel shame and we have no way to deal with it effectively. But Jesus absorbs our shame. And instead of living out a guilt culture or a shame culture, I want to encourage us to live out a dignity culture. A guilt culture would say, I am valuable for how I feel. If I feel good about myself, if I have self-esteem, then I am good and I am valuable. A shame and honor culture would say, I am valuable for what people think of me, for what I do, for my inclusion in the group, based on what I do. And I would say both of them have got it wrong. Instead, our value comes from being who we are, not based on what we do or how we feel about ourselves, but instead, our value is based in our inherent dignity, in being made in the image of God. That is where our value comes from. But I could be wrong. If you think I am, let me know. Let me know why. I had fun and I hope you did too. Bye-bye.